Okay, we're almost finished. And I'm going to ask some of you if anybody wants to come up and say something. But before that, I got a message from Norman's first student, and there is a picture of him. His name is Nasim Khan, and he came from Pakistan about the same, actually before Norman came to Brooklyn College. And so now he doesn't travel. But he said, when you have a name like Nasim Khan, since 9/11, you do not travel.
Yeah.
So he's in Cape Cod, and he said this: "It is with great sadness that I inform you of the passing." I'm sorry. This is a letter he wrote to the Yeast Journal, because he's been in touch with these journals ever since he retired. Okay, it is with great sadness that I inform you of the passing of Norman Eaton, Professor Emeritus of Biology at Brooklyn College, CUNY. I'm forgetting what CUNY stands for. Professor Eaton came to Brooklyn College in 1962 as a new faculty member and was actively setting up a research laboratory. At this time, I was a new graduate student in the biology department. After an interview with Professor Eaton, I joined his laboratory to work toward my PhD thesis. After 4 years of active research at Professor Eaton's laboratory, I submitted a thesis entitled Purification and Characterization of Maltese and Alpha-Methyl Glucosidase in the yeast Saccharomyces cerevisiae to fulfill the requirements of the doctoral degree. Norman and I published several papers in renowned journals from his thesis work. The most significant work was published in the journal Biochemica Biophysica Octa in 1967. We published additional papers and abstracts from Professor Eaton's laboratory as well. Professor Eaton trained at least 5 to 6 PhD students and many master's students. Of course, undergraduates were always working in the laboratory. Professor Eaton was a dedicated scholar and devoted his life to research and science. He will be greatly missed by his colleagues and students. Norman was my teacher and my friend. And they love him. Okay, thank you. And I see Lynn, Norman's newest, well, he's not really his newest relative, he was the newest relative that Norman met. So here's Win Eaton.
So, thank you, Muzza. So just to clarify, I'm the brother of Norman, which means we share the same father. Our father was Chester. And I suppose if I came up with an impromptu title, it would be Parallel Lives. And it's amazing to me. Kate, and I need to reach out a special thank you to you. I'll be forever grateful for you and one of my younger nieces on our side of the clan getting together through the 23andMe, perhaps.
Oh.
And somehow we were able to get together with Kate and Muzza just 1 year ago, and with Norman. But as I've been hearing the stories here today, it strikes me in a very real way how genetically connected we are. When you talk about the traits, and I'm not talking about just the wine tasting. I'm talking about the tenderness. I have a tendency to cry. You may have to put up with that. When I was in politics, I couldn't hold my emotions either. Sometimes when I'm in court, I get rather passionate. I'm an attorney. And I've had judges say such things to me as, well, this is after I wrote an extensive brief for a very difficult judge in El Paso, Texas on an immigration matter. And I said, it's the job of this honorable court to protect the innocents from a sometime tyrannical government. And this judge says, colorful language there, counselor. But the end of that story was a good ending, because this judge had never granted a particular relief that we were seeking. But he said he was entertained enough by the colorful language that he granted my motion.
Wow.
We've had many victories in the courts. The other day, and this is where some of that innate Eaton pride comes out. I think it was Abby yesterday at lunch, or maybe Terry, perhaps one of you asked, well, that trial I was hearing about last week, did you win? And I looked, it was just a blank stare, and said, well, of course I won. I can't remember when I didn't win. And then I realized that wasn't very humble, was it? But as I've listened to the traits of the concern for humanity, I know there's been a lot of history in the desertion that happened with Wayne and Norman after Lowell's death. Our dad left that family. Well, in many ways, he left our clan too, and there were 7 of us siblings. And we sort of remotely knew about each other. But I have to look back at my dad's heart, and he was concerned. He did care about us. He and our mother instilled a certain passion for humanity, a love for life, and a love for learning. It was interesting, years later I ended up living in a place called Philomath, Oregon. In Greek that meant love of learning. Now, I actually many times thought about Philomath as being the traits that Mom had passed on to those 7 siblings. One of them is sitting right back here nodding his head like he really knows we're good. This is my brother Morris, and Morris is in Toledo, Ohio, where we all grew up, just about 100 miles from our brother Wayne and his family. And it's been such a delight, Terry, to get to know you. And I appreciate you allowing us to be a part of your lives now, and all the rest of you. This is very special. It's really a surreal time. And I'm looking back here at James and Gail, and I know from the little bit of conversation we've had over the last few hours that we're going to be fast friends. And not only these relatives that you heard about out there someplace. And I also realized, Kate, that the little booklet you made with Mick's book, it's only 50% complete, because I think when you tie in the rest of our clan, it's going to tip maybe to a tipping point on the number of pages that will need to be added to cover the voluminous and prolific side of the Chester clan. So this has been really an emotional time for me this past year, but particularly now since Norman is gone. It strikes me in a real emotional way that I've always had these little anchors of seniors, parents, older siblings to hang on to. All of a sudden now, I feel cast away. I'm unmoored. I don't know where this ship is sailing next, but when my dad Chester died, I felt very much that way. I was with him the night that he died, and he wasn't cognizant about things, but very shortly before he got so ill, then he suggested, actually he insisted that I go in the military, thought it would be good, get out of the inner city, and I did that. I followed his advice. But then when my older brother died, well actually Mom died in 2007, and that was a real difficult time. But then when my older brother died of cancer here in maybe 2010 or 11, then that put me in an awkward place where all of a sudden I need to be an example to the rest of these siblings that I picked on all of those years. And then I found Norman. I was so grateful. I'm not cast adrift anymore. But now I guess this leaves me as the eldest surviving son of Chester. I guess the eldest surviving sibling, those that we know about. But thank you very much. I appreciate and love you all.